When I started thinking about this text and the title, It's Hard to Be Humble, came to mind. Everybody know that song? It's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. That kind of came to mind. That's not quite what this is about, but it kind of, something gets stuck in your head sometimes when you hear certain words. So help me out here. What makes someone important, famous, or sought after? What makes them so important that we kind of just go, ooh, I can't wait to see this person? What makes them important, sought after? Special talents, absolutely. Those ball players. Sometimes those special preachers. Singers. Do we have favorite singers? Oh yeah. Somebody that you would give just about anything that you own to get some tickets to go see? Absolutely. So something very, different that they have that the rest of us don't. Well, we are culturalized that the richest, the prettiest, the smartest, the fastest, strongest, scariest, weirdest are the ones that get all of the attention. Am I right? Isn't that what the media likes to concentrate on? The media decides for us what and who is newsworthy, i.e., important enough not only to talk about, but to take up precious print space in newspaper or now internet. Who really deserves airtime? For some reason, a lot of us jockey for that precious 15 minutes of fame. How many people watch the real life shows that are out there? They've got summer camp this year. It Was Always Lost, and some of those. Anybody kind of addicted to those? Bachelorette. Okay, we have a couple of confessors here. We have others that say absolutely not. What makes us so crazy that we actually are willing to do crazy things, sometimes dangerous, i.e. the hero, and even inappropriate things that we would never ever do in public otherwise, but we're willing to do it just for that opportunity to be famous, if only for a couple of minutes? What are we thinking? Or is it that we're not? Well, I think a lot of times when we're looking to hit the news or whatever, people are actually looking for validation. They want to be accepted. They want to be seen as important. Maybe even to know that they're alive. Something about them hasn't received that in other parts of their life. So they're kind of looking for it any place that they can get it. And they're willing to do the off-the-wall, dangerous, and crazy in order to be acknowledged. So for the rest of us who consider ourselves sane and not willing to do those things, why are we so enthralled with famous people? This kind of came in my mind because as I was traveling back from North Carolina this week, my friend and I were listening to a station out of Memphis, Tennessee, the Elvis Channel. And we got talking about how in Elvis's younger days, the women would just go off the wall, fainting and everything. What makes people this crazy to want to seek someone's attention? I didn't have an answer. Here's a question for you. You've probably heard this one before. This is a great one. If you could meet anyone in the world, living or dead, and share a meal with them, who would it be? Help me out. I'm sorry?
Tennessee Ernie Ford.
Ooh, all right. Tennessee Ernie Ford. Who else? Abraham Lincoln. Ooh, interesting choice. Who else? St. Peter. Okay. Come on, you all have somebody that you want to talk to. Jesus. Absolutely. Who else? The president. Which one? Barack Obama. Okay. Who else? Teddy Roosevelt. Who's your person of choice that you want to talk to? I'd love to meet Desmond Tutu. Actually, I have met him once. Love to talk with him. Nelson Mandela. But I'm kind of geeky that way. So who would? And why? What makes that person so special for you that you want to be able to sit and have a conversation with them? Been able to to accomplish stuff, maybe things that we haven't. You want to kind of be able to pick their brain and find out what it was that made them stick with it. Because often we chicken out. What was it that drove them to do what they did? And why did you choose to accomplish that? Would also be a really good question. Does sharing a meal and conversation with that particular individual change how you feel about yourself? What do you think? Would it? Would you learn something about yourself? I know I would. Okay, would you take a picture to remember and to prove to others that you really met this person? Yeah, absolutely. How many people would post it up to Facebook or something like that? Have it posted prominently in your house? Absolutely. Then your friends would say, oh yeah, that's just a cutout, right? Come on, tell the truth. How often do you hear people, and maybe do you, name drop? I did a minute ago, didn't I? It could be about a person, it could be a special place. Do you think that ups your importance to people? No? Does that change your own sense of importance that you've been to some of these places or talked with these individuals? If you were to throw the ultimate party, so we could invite anybody that we wanted, who would be invited? Would it be the people that we've already mentioned that we wanted to have conversation with? Or would it be other people plus them? Sometimes we want to have an intimate conversation with somebody, but not necessarily invite them to a big party, right? But if you could invite anybody to the ultimate party, who's your big ticket draw? Well, today's text is about just such a situation. We naturally seem to often gravitate, when we think in terms of parties and dinners, who do we usually invite? Family, friends, those people that we know that know us, those people that are like us. Maybe someone special who's in the area that we can actually get to say yes. So you're having this ultimate dinner party, you've got your list, and you've got a special person coming, whoever that person is for you. So you start by making sure that that special person knows that they are special to you, and that they're kind of like the guest of honor. We're building this party around you. But then you also have to make sure that everybody else who's coming doesn't get offended because they're not seen as special as this person. And if you're going to have a sit-down meal, oh my God, thinking in terms of weddings, seating charts, who sits by who, and if you have a special guest, who gets to sit at that person's table then has a bit more bragging rights. They've had more access. They've gotten to have close conversation. But how would you feel if your special guests actually sought out those who are deemed as the lowest or on the edge of the party? They've kind of slunk in and you're letting them be there, but they're really not your choice of who you want. Or what if they actually preferred to spend their time back in the kitchen with the caterer rather than with y'all? How do you think that'd make you feel? I invited them and they're back there. Well, Jesus was just such a guest. His place of preference was with those who everybody else deemed on the edges of society. People were always trying to drag Jesus into the center of attention, weren't they? They would flock to wherever he went. They would try and make him the center, and he would stay there for a while. But what was his preference? He wanted to move to the edges. Even when he was the center, his eyes would often wander, and they would seek out the people on the edges. They would seek out the people hurting and in need of something, almost as if by two magnets seeking each other. If Jesus were to throw a dinner party, who would he invite? What do you think? Who else? Who are the people that Jesus hung out with? Misfits. Lepers. Poor people. Broken. In need of healing. In need of love. Congratulations, y'all are misfits. Each and every one of us would be invited. Each and every one of us are often blind and deaf to Christ's ways and the cries of his people. Just because we have eyes doesn't mean that we can see. Just because we have ears doesn't mean that we hear. We are all broken and in need of Christ's healing, the only healing that can make us whole again. At Christ's party, all people are invited. All of humanity needs a relationship with that pure source of love and life. That relationship is waiting for each and every one of us. All we need to do is be open to it and to seek it. Today's text calls us to ask ourselves, how do we embody Christ's radical and extravagant welcome to all others? How do we show that we are open and welcoming of all people regardless of ethnicity, their color, their culture, their previous actions, their abilities or disabilities, whatever we call them, their other religious beliefs, their sexual orientation, and all the other things that we use to divide us one from another? How do we welcome them not just on the street, but into the sanctuary? And more importantly, into our lives? How do we strive to seek beyond the outside shell and to see the image of God within each person we meet? I could say, do we? But I'd rather say, how do we? This, my friends, is the core of today's message. How do we put our own egos aside, our own ambitions to climb society's ladder and be important in our own eyes and the eyes of others? How do we see, accept, and care for those in the edges, those we might usually ignore, maybe even shun? How do we shed society's ideas of who and what is important? And how do we open ourselves to be God's broken, yet willing vessels to all people, without restrictions or conditions, with open hands and open hearts? Christ promises all we seek and more, much more is ours. We are welcomed, accepted, and loved in God's eyes unconditionally. We are important, special, and even sought out because we are God's beloved children. Sometimes we need a reminder of this. Sometimes we need someone to open our eyes and our ears, and most importantly, our hearts to God's love. Once we are open and accept God's love, then we are urged, called, and even compelled to do likewise. Once you see and hear, you can't unsee, you can't unhear. It is difficult to turn your back on others. Today, God is peeling back another layer, covering our eyes, ears, and hearts. Will you strive to move towards others with less fear and suspicion in your heart and more of God's vision and love of others? May it be so. Amen.